let's do a cheeky little podcast episode, shan't we? But before we get into it, I wanted to show my t-shirt that I'm wearing. I'm really bad about presenting what I'm wearing, so this is something that I knit myself. It's the Feels Right tee by Lily Kate France. I knitted on 3.5mm needles, if I'm not misremembering. It's been a year, and it's the Isager Baumeline, so cotton linen mix, and it's held up really well. I mean, there is one loose end that is poking out that I will have to fix. I'm also considering remaking the sleeves because I didn't like the design feature of how to decrease for the sleeves, because I thought it would look, I didn't think it would look nice. So I did something else, and I'm not sure that I think this looks nice either. I think I would like a bit more of a tight fit, so I might go back and remake those. I also think that I will add some centimeters on the bottom. I have maybe 70% of a ball left, and I might as well just use it for this to make it really great, because right now it's a bit too short and it's a bit off, and I might also remake the neck lining, because the bind off is quite tight. I just did a slipped over cast off because I wanted it to retain some structural integrity, which has been great because this is a fully natural fibre, it's fully plant fibre, so it just sort of loses its shape as opposed to a woolen fibre that would sort of spring back. But I think this is a bit too tight, and you know when you pull it over your head and you can sort of, you need to do it in the proper angle for it not to snag on anything. And I can't wear my headphones, I can't wear my glasses when I put it on, and that's a small detail, but it's something that has been annoying me ever so slightly. So I might go back and fix those things, but it's not something that's super urgent, but I would like it to be just that little bit better. But overall, I'm really pleased with it. I've worn it a lot, and I look forward to a summer of wearing it even more this year. So now that we have that introduction in place, let's get into my finished objects. Let me show you. I have knitted a bunch of sailor slippers, and I can't remember which were finished last time around. Maybe these were finished. These are all knitted in Drops Snow. I'm knitting them for a bachelorette trip that I'm going on with some friends, and these are for the bride. And these are not really dry just yet. They do feel like a rain-drenched sheep. I knit these on 8mm needles, which the pattern calls for. I am, however, wildly off gauge, apparently, even though I did attempt 2 gauge swatches and thought I was on gauge for 8mm needles the second time around. So first time I knit a gauge swatch on 9mm needles and on 6 because I didn't have anything in between. The 6 was too small, the 9 was wildly too large. I filmed a project vlog about them, and that's coming up in a few weeks. And apparently I must have looked at the wrong gauge for the 9mm needle, because I can't have been that off gauge that I needed to size down drastically. I was surprised myself because I'm a very tight knitter, and I thought a 7 should be fine because I'm so off gauge with a 9 that a 7 instead of a 6 should be good. Then I didn't find any 7s, so I bought a 6.5 and was off gauge for that. So these have been knitted twice, once in the 6.5 and then ripped back and knit on 8mm needles. But knitting them on 8mm needles, I've found that I used the exact same amount of yarn that I did as on the 6.5. So I fear I can't make that make sense. This is a knitting pattern by Annie Germain, Annie Sews, and it's a wildly popular pattern. If you've seen any knitting content online, you've seen these 1,000 times, and I understand why, because they are a nifty little project. They are incredibly quick to make. I memorized the pattern fairly quickly because I'm just making the same thing 6 times over. All of us use the same size, except this one is for a person with size 39 and this one is 40, as are the rest. They use the same numbers of stitches, so there isn't a size 40, there is a size 39 and a 41. But the yarns, they behaved a little bit differently. These are felted in the same, on the same setting, so 60 degrees Celsius, just washed because I don't tumble dry my clothing, so I thought that was a waste of energy to just toss these in the dryer. So I washed them instead quite hot. And the uncoloured, the white neutral undyed yarn is a lot flimsier than the dyed version. And some of the dye lots, or some of the colours, also seem to be different in how they felted. So these two, for example, are quite different. And then again, this one, the white, has kept quite a lot of stitch definition in comparison to these other ones. So that's quite interesting. I prefer the look of the coloured, the dyed yarns, but this is fine. This is a fun project, and I'm very happy that I'm done with all 12 of them that I knit, all 12 individual slippers. So that is the end of an era, I suppose. I have a lot of scraps left because obviously I wasn't on gauge for the 8mm needles, and I just have so much yarn left. I don't know what to do with them. I think I might knit some slippers for my nibblings and then probably knit a giant basket, felt it, and use around the house, because this really thick unspun yarn doesn't really lend itself to the projects that I prefer making. So that is it for my knit finished objects. I have 2 upcycles that I wanted to show you as well. One of them is definitely knitting related and one isn't at all. This is a standard raglan pullover that my mum knit for me over a decade ago. I've worn it to absolute pieces and it was just starting to wear through. It's knit with unspun Icelandic wool, 1 strand of it, so it's not as thick as the Drops of Snow, but it was just coming undone in a few places and you could see the fibres just sort of stringing apart. Not that anything had broken, nothing has been eating on this, but it was not holding on very well. So I thought, let's just do some visible mending, because I have all of this unspun yarn. Let me just reinforce those places where the yarn is coming undone. And I am not a darner in any capacity, but I think it looks quite fun with these little random visible mending pieces. I haven't worn it yet because it's just way too hot for this, but I look forward to being able to pull this out and knowing that it is still a closet staple, because the grey is very sleek, it is super elegant, but now also it's a bit fun, because, you know, a garment that is taken care of can live a few lives. So the first section, the first portion of the life is where it's sleek, it's elegant, it looks like new, it's pristine. And then when it gets more worn, you can either decide to get rid of it or let it languish in your closet, or you can upcycle it and it doesn't have the elegant minimalistic look anymore because it has been worn and darned and fixed, but it can still spark joy. And this is definitely one of those pieces. So I think it has lived the first chapter of its life to the finish, and now it's beginning a new chapter. I have other pieces that are more elegant, and this is more dopamine dressing, which is great. And it's also just such a good staple. I don't think that there is a pattern for it. It's just a raglan. It's a 1x1 ribbed hem and cuff, and a 1x1 ribbed and lifted over bind off. It was knit bottom up, and now it has these cheeky little flowers on it. My next upcycle is also something that I have worn to death, and now I want to give it a second life. These are my super old navy jeans. And I've worn these. I bought them, when did I visit the US? I think 2022, in December of 2022. I've owned these jeans for 4.5 years, and they used to be my absolute staple. So I would wear them literally 4 times a week, 5 times a week, because they are just so good. They fit so well, and they are just a neutral blue color. They are sky high, wide leg, and they're extra high rise. They don't make this model anymore, which is such a shame because these were spectacular. But then after a few years of daily wear, my thigh chafing just rubbed through. I patched it as best I could using just one iron-on patch and one iron-on patch, which I sewed back down with just back and forth stitching. And that made the thigh area a bit chafy, a bit uncomfortable, and I upgraded to a pair of nudie jeans, which is a Swedish company, which is also sustainable. It is, they have a lifetime guarantee on repairs, so if your jeans break, they will repair them for free for you, which is an amazing deal. And I've worn those instead for the last 1.5 years since I owned them, and these have just not been used. They are still wearable now that I've patched them. They are appropriate, but they are not, they don't have a role to fill that my nudie jeans don't fill better. So I thought I would upcycle these into something fun. And I hadn't even thought about making these into shorts now that I think about it, but there's nothing wrong with the legs except for the thigh chafing, but I can't get around that. And I like the length, and I like the look, and I like the flare. So I thought I'll just add some lemons. So that's what I did. So I made a lino print of a lemon. I used some fabric paint, and I stamped these little lemons on them. And absolutely adorable. Such a big fan. Now I have to dig out my iron and fix them before I wear them out. And I don't know where my iron is because I just do not use an iron for anything. I'm not the kind of person that wears clothing that needs to be ironed. I don't have that sort of time to spend. I would much rather be knitting. So those are my 3 finished objects: a bunch of sailor slippers, my upcycled grey knitted shirt, and my lemon jeans that now have their own standalone role in my wardrobe. Now I have 2 whips that I've been working on with my hands, and a third that I've been planning. So the one that I've been working on the most is my Amy top by Mochi Knits. It is a cheeky little sleeveless top with a fold over collar and a little band, a little plaque down the middle, and now I'm just knitting in the round, making it as long as I can with this yarn. The yarn is from Isager as well. It is their Trio 1, I think. I don't think there is a 2 behind the name, so I think it's just Trio, therefore Trio 1. It is a mix of linen, viscose and bamboo, if I'm not misremembering. And this yarn is super slippery. It just loses all integrity in the ball. So I saw a genius person on Instagram using like a gauze tube to hold it together, like a ball for a center pull. I didn't have any of that, so I thought, why don't I just shove it down some coffee cups? And I've been doing just that, and I plopped them in my purse when I've taken this with me to knit on the go. And yeah, they are heavy, but they also are incredibly sturdy. The yarn isn't going anywhere. The center pull hasn't given me any yarn bath. And this is a game changer if you are in the market for remaining sane with yarn that gives you grief. Look, it's just absolutely flawless. Amazing. 10 out of 10 recommend. I'm knitting on 3.5mm needles. I am off gauge for this, so I'm making up a size that doesn't really exist. I knit a gauge swatch with just one yarn. That was too thin. It didn't feel appropriate. It felt too see-through. Then I knit with 2 yarns held together, 2 strands held together. I really like that fabric. It is a bit see-through like this, but looking against skin, no one is going to be able to see anything if they're not standing too close, and if they are, that is their problem. And I think the pattern recommends a 4mm needle, but I'm using a 3.5 because that's the gauge I liked the look of the best. Then I did some maths, and I am not a math person, and I also think my gauge swatch lied to me, because the gauge in my gauge swatch, knitted, blocked, dried, everything, does match this. And if I do the calculations again, I think I would come to the same conclusion about a size, but it just didn't work out the way that I wanted. So I had knit all of it. I'd knit the button band. If you saw my last podcast episode, you saw that I just placed a little marker at the top of one of the button bands, which isn't a button band because there are no buttons, but the plaque, and went to join in the round. And I did cast on under the arm for the round. Then when I tried it on after 7 centimeters length, it was just far too big, and I didn't like that, and I wasn't really thrilled with how the button band plaque came together in the front either. So this portion, I think I dropped one of the stitches and picked it up, but it was still too long, so it was 2 rows long instead of just one, and it just didn't look as neat as I wanted it to. So I ripped back the plaque because that is knit a few rows after you join in the round. So I would have to rip back either way, and that was fine because this version I do like a lot better. I also sized up on the needles for the plaque this time around. Last time I did a 3mm needle for the plaque, and this time around I did the 3.5, which I think looks really good. There is no waving. There's an awful lot of ends to weave in, though. That is a problem for future me to handle. And I also sized up to a 3.5 and then a 4mm needle for the collar. I haven't blocked the collar yet because I'm knitting on it, but I should do that to see how it lays if I need to redo the bind off. It's feeling a bit too tight. I might have to find a stretchier bind off that doesn't curl quite as much as this one does. But this pattern is very intricate. It has this little seam detail down the back which carries over the shoulder, and the way that the front V is connected and overlaps is just very elegant. It's really been thought through thoroughly, and the cuffs or the armholes, they're finished in a very sleek way too, and I'm just a very big fan of the end result. The collar as well features a band of like double knitting or knitting in the round and then single knitting for the collar itself. So it's very structural, and it's unlike anything else that I've ever knit. It has pissed me off a few times. I have also been pissed off at my partner, because normally I can just, if my partner comes in and asks me something or needs to know something quick or comes home, I've been home for a while and he comes home, I can just put down my knitting, greet him, talk to him, and then go back to my knitting. But with this, I've really had to focus, and I've actually snapped on him once with this, which never happens usually, when I was like, can you please, I need to focus. And then I'm like, okay, this pattern pisses me off because I do not understand it. I don't know if it's a language barrier thing or if it's a habit thing, that it's just a bunch of these tiny little details and techniques that I'm not used to that just demand my full attention, and I can't leave anything in the middle of the step. So for example, when I was learning is it the Icelandic bind off, or which bind off is it? The sewn bind off, 1x1 rib bind off, whatever it's called. I would have to be with the project the entire time when I was doing it, because I couldn't read my own knitting and I couldn't figure out, okay, if I leave this now, if I take a break and I come back to it, where am I? What step comes next? But now that I can do that, I can be interrupted in it. But with these different techniques, I haven't mastered them to that extent yet, and that has pissed me off a few times. So I'm happy to be finished with all of the things that have pissed me off. Now I'm just knitting in the round, and I'm not going to make the same mistake with this as I did with this t-shirt and knit it too short. I do want to wear this on the bachelorette trip, which is coming up in just a few days, a week, 2 weeks, and that would be great to be done with. But if it's not, then it's not, and that's fine too. Now, another project that I've been working on that has sort of consumed my thinking, my strategic mind, is a self-drafted baseball cap. Now, why do I want to knit a baseball cap? First of all, because it's fucking cool, and second of all, because I want, in the back you can see the little gap here, I want to add a bow, and I want it to be ridiculously large. And I am creating these seam lines by slip stitch columns and decreasing at selected intervals. This has really challenged my mathematical skill, because I've been working out my gauge and the measurements, and I looked absolutely insane. I did like I made a pattern for my head because I wanted it to fit perfectly snugly, and so I wrapped my head in cling film, taped it, and drew the lines where I wanted it to be, because that's like my starting point. So I've knit 5 centimeters, and I'm going to knit another 10 centimeters before I hit the crown, or about 10 centimeters. And I think I'm going to be doing a bunch of prototypes for this, because I don't think that this is the perfect version just yet, but I need to look at it to be able to pinch in fabric and get the perfect fit, because a flat pattern only brings you so far, right? So this is one of my projects that I'm working on and writing on at the same time, but I think it could be a cool thing, right? I think so. Definitely think so. Should I add... I think I should add a seam at the very center back too. Yeah, let's do that. And then the plan for this is to add a brim, or is it called a brim? The thing sticking out. Skärm in Swedish. The brim, is it? That is the plan, and that is going to be knitted and reinforced as well. And if this ends up being something good, I'm going to release it as a pattern, which I'm stoked about. The next thing that I'm working on is also something that I am writing up at the same time that I'm doing it. It's for my pea green spring cardigan. It's not going to be a spring cardigan anymore because I'm not knitting on it currently. I am working on the pattern. I'm writing it up. I'm making my own lace cable chart, and that is really fun. I'm actually enjoying it quite a lot. The maths of it all, how I want the construction to look, where do I want the seams for the shoulders to be, how do I want it to look. So I'm making a first version of that, and then I'm going to see what I like, what I don't like, remake them, and if it ends up being something that I am enjoying and want to share with the world, then I'm going to write that up as well as a pattern. But to begin with, I am focusing on the baseball cap. So my spring cardigan is going to be an autumn cardigan, and that's fine because it's going to be green, and I love green all year round, but it's not going to be finished this time around because it's just too hot now to be thinking about warm knits. The baseball cap also comes into my acquisitions, my purchases. I haven't acquired, I have purchased. This is cotton yarn, 100% cotton from Systrene Grene, a chain in Sweden with a bunch of crafty supplies, because I got this idea, I got this idea for the hat and I really wanted to cast it on immediately, and I didn't want to wait for yarn. I didn't go anywhere that has a specific yarn store, so I went to them and I found this cotton yarn. It's not the best, but I'm also not thinking that this is the last iteration of this, so it is going to be good enough. And I want this to be knit on cotton yarn to begin with, because I wanted to be able to hold its shape and be a correct shape without relying too much on wool and the stretchiness in wool. So I got 2 balls of this cotton. It is 100% cotton. I don't have the sleeve with me. So it's just a unicolor cotton yarn from Systrene Grene. Next up, I have a pattern book that I've borrowed. I haven't bought it, I've just borrowed it. It's called Knit, Fold, Pleat, Repeat by Nora Gorn. And it has a bunch of really cool geometric fold patterns. So what can I show you without showing you a pattern? Oh yeah, so for example, knitting and then pleating, smocking together. It's just really cool, and it has given me 1,001 ideas. I would like to keep this book forever, but I'm not going to do that, and I don't need to buy the book. It is available at the library, it's fine, but I just want to make so many things from this. And there are like cushion covers, pillow covers, there are scarves and cardigans, and all of it has this geometric, quite mathematical element to it, and it's just really gorgeous and it's super inspiring. So if you haven't thought about it before, head to your local library and check out what they have. what knitting books they have, because some of the books that I borrowed in the last few months are just spectacular, and some of them are quite old as well, so it gets you a bunch of inspiration that isn't currently on everyone else's needles, which I think is a nice change. And with that said, I think I'm finished. I think I'm done. I am going to find my iron board and iron, hopefully. If I have time, I don't know what time is it now. I don't know how long I've been here rambling. And then I'm headed out for a beer or two with some friends. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. And please let me know what you've been working on while you watch this. If you did your laundry, if you did your dishes, please let me know. But maybe if you have wet hands, don't reach for your phone. Leave it for the next video. But let me know what you're working on, if you're knitting or crocheting or crafting in any way, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I will see you the next time around. Bye.